Okay, so with this EP coming out now, I'll be honest, I did not get enough of a chance to really dive into what you have done musically. Is this going to be the first project that you're releasing?
No, I've had some other projects, but when it comes to coming up with a plan and not just putting songs together and throwing them out there, this is the first project that I actually took my time on, and I was more strategic when it came to like what I was saying in my songs, to where it's family friendly, it's kid friendly, to where you can play it anywhere and there's no cursing in it. So it's a clean EP, and it should be able to be heard everywhere.
Yep, that's really smart. I think some people overlook that, with like they don't make the radio version of their song or things like that. Like, so you have avoided that hurdle and just made, like, if it's kind of like Calvin Harris style music, like you want it to be as appealing to as many people as it is, not limited to adults and parents who don't want to play it when their kids are around and that kind of thing. That's true. So with this EP coming out now, if you were to have an absolute blank slate and I were to give you a recommendation, what I would say is pick one or two of these songs on the EP that can be lead singles initially, that are promoted in a way that they're almost like a pre-save campaign for the whole EP itself. Because at the beginning, when you want this full EP out, you want Spotify to be playing a hand in promoting it with you. And if at the very beginning, like say it's been a while since you've released something, or if you haven't put a lot of marketing into a release before this point, or it's been a while since you have, if you just kind of go in cold with a full EP, Spotify isn't going to really know what to do with it or who to place it in front of. Because Spotify and its algorithm don't work in a way where it like scans your song and it says, oh, okay, this is 128 beats per minute. It's in the key of E. Okay, let's put it over here. It's all operating in a way where they're analyzing the data from the people who are listening to you and what patterns they can find within it. So they're not necessarily looking for who you sound similar to. Even if you happen to sound similar to Calvin Harris, Spotify isn't necessarily looking for that in particular. They're looking to see if the people who listen to you also listen to Calvin Harris. And let's say your audience also listens to Adele. Like, she might not be a similar artist to you, but it's quite likely that if you have 100,000 listeners, 10,000 of them might just also like Adele. So Spotify is kind of looking for patterns like, well, is it guys in their 20s in Vegas who are also listening to Calvin Harris? Is that who's listening to this? Okay, great. If so, let's show anybody who fits those parameters. Let's put this song on those people's release radar or Discover Weekly, eventually editorial playlists. So if you're able to have like one single that is eventually going to be on the EP, if that can come out first, and when we start the new marketing experiment, we don't need to go all in at the beginning because we don't necessarily know what song is going to work best. We don't necessarily know what audience we have where. So we can use that lead single as a way to start our marketing experiment, kind of start to figure out, all right, generally who's listening. And if we find out, okay, 30-year-olds are listening, well, TikTok ads might not be as important than if your audience were 18. Or hypothetically, if for whatever reason 42-year-olds love your music because those older women you're going after. If for whatever reason, based on the audience, will then set the next step of the best way to market to that audience. It's a thing in music why there is no clear step one, do this, every artist do this, then okay, step two, every artist do this, and it will work for everybody. Because if you're like with assuming that your music is probably going to be most resonating with 17 to 24-year-olds would be my guess. But even then, we don't want to, if we're going to go run a Facebook or Instagram ad with a new ad or for this EP, we want to avoid going into it saying like, hey, Instagram, let's run this ad at anyone in America who likes Calvin Harris, because that could be 28 million people. And let's say even if you're spending $2,000 for the month on Facebook ads, which would be a pretty sizable ad for like most independent artists, right? But even with that advertisement, if the audience is so big, they don't know exactly who you're actually aiming for. If your ad set on any place that you advertise, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, they're all built in a way, and all of their ad platforms are built in a way where it's meant to hit a target that you give it. It's not necessarily designed to help you find the target in the first place. So with you've got a big following on your Instagram. You've probably got a lot of insights already about generally where your fans are, who's engaging with your content already. So that's a good place. It doesn't matter where you're getting this data, whether it's from Spotify for Artists, if your YouTube channel is blowing up, like probably got highlights and stuff. Like you have a lot of people engaging with your content. We just kind of want to find the sweet spot. And instead of saying, hey, Instagram, let's run this video ad at anyone in America who likes Calvin Harris. If we know that generally the people who are already engaging with your content, who are already familiar with who you're like, when I saw your name, it took me a minute, right? When I was telling you for the voice memo, I'm like, why does this guy's name sound so familiar? And then eventually it clicked. Yeah. But that's a great example of with a casual listener who's going through their day, whether it's Spotify, wherever they're at. They might see your name and they might not know why right away why they recognize your name, but they'll recognize it. And that's like the power of attention. And if you don't have attention, you got to advertise to get attention. So if we find, for example, that your music resonates the most, or the audience that resonates the most with your kind of content is mostly guys who are 18 to 24, but the top 3 or 4 cities are Phoenix, Vegas, Oakland, and wherever. It's always better to double down on a smaller audience that you know is there and have that smaller audience see that advertisement multiple times than it is to say, let's target everyone in America. And even if you hit everybody, if they see it one time, it's very unlikely that they take action on whatever ad they see, even if the ad is great. So it's much more effective to say, instead of hitting 1 million people with this advertisement, I want to hit 200,000 people 5 times a piece and do it that way. And whether you've got information from YouTube analytics or your Instagram insights or Spotify for Artists, whatever it is, I like to view all of that data as like a radar, not a compass. North is always north on a compass, but your target audience, because it's on the internet, it can move around. If you signed with the Bills tomorrow, like Buffalo you might not be getting any clicks. You might not have many listeners or viewers from Buffalo at all right now, but tomorrow you might get a lot of viewers from Buffalo. So all of this information about your target audience is like a radar. Where are the targets right now? I don't necessarily know where they're going, but right now they're right here. And in 6 months, it might look totally different. But right now, for the ad that I'm going to set up or for the show I'm going to try to go book, right now my audience is here.
Nice.
So what I would do is I would take one song from this EP and I would set it to come out like 2 months before the full EP is set to release, and just start rolling out some sort of marketing experiments. You can start making content that's all about the one song, but then have like the secondary message be like full project on the way. Because I'm really against it's one thing if Wiz Khalifa is making content about, hey guys, my new album is coming out next month. I hope you're excited. Like, a lot of people already know that they like his music. So he already has a core fan base that I hear that message once or twice. It clicks, great. I'm waiting for that album. But if you're like a new artist, or if you're someone who's rolling out a new type of content similar like to you, it's much, instead of for a month and a half of, hey, my EP's coming out soon. Oh, can't wait. Hey, hope you remember this in 2 months. Like, hey, stranger, do me a favor in 2 months from now. Good luck. So instead, if you have that one lead single for that 2 months, your marketing message can be like, I'm taking my music serious to another level. Here's the first lead single. I hope you have fun with it. Let me know what you think. And then now for 2 months, you can talk about something that's there right now that casual listener or someone who might be aware of you one way or another will now give this music a chance. And then the people who like it, Spotify starts to see, okay, wow, a bunch of people in their 20s in Phoenix are listening to this guy. And Spotify knows when your next EP is coming out if you set it up with your distributor. And they start to like pick a target of where that EP is going to start to show up on release radar. So I would approach it that way, where in a very good way, you have time on your side where you don't necessarily have a big audience, like eagerly anticipating a full album. So in a good way, you can lean into that. And let's say almost like the Lil Nas X strategy, where like he had one song that just like blew up. He didn't like release a new EP the next month. He milked that thing for all it's worth, and he got 7 different people to do remixes, right? So in a very, let's say hypothetically with the lead single, it does start to grow, and it's growing and it's not slowing down. You might not have to release the full EP. And I think that's in a good way. If one thing's already catching, you don't necessarily want to distract from that momentum. I think a lot of people in music in particular, they think, I've got momentum here. Great. Well, let me just it's same thing's bound to happen with song 2, no matter what. Boom. And then instead of doubling down on this momentum to take it higher, they hope for the best. They take away, and then, oh, this only did this much, and then poof, shit.
Oh, no.
So with that being said, like, I know you had mentioned you do have a lead single in mind. Can you tell me a little bit about that song?
The song is called My Type. When I was creating it, I had everything written out. I went over it, put it down on the track, and then I was like, all right, let me see if I can stack some of these vocals. So I stacked some of the vocals, and they kind of like, when I stacked them, they kind of had like a very country feel to it, and I wasn't even trying to do it on purpose, but I was like, you know what? I kind of like this, so I kept going with it, and it ended up playing out perfectly, and a lot of people, or the people that I listen to it in my circle, listened to it, and they were like, oh, this is a good country song, and I was like, I wasn't really going for country, I was trying to go for pop, but all right. So I kind of set it up to go out as a country pop song. So yeah, it's got a nice little friendly vibe to it. Somewhere that you can play, so it kind of brightens up the vibe around the area. I feel like when you hear it. So
hell yeah. Well, I think that's a great example of how like genres are kind of like blending together more and more these days, and it's kind of, if you showed Lil Nas X that Old Town Road to 100 people, 50 of them would tell you it was country, and 50 of them would tell you it was hip hop, and some might not know what to call it. And I think that's like a good example where like you can make it. It doesn't need to be defined rigidly into one genre. Like if you make the music and like let people define it for themselves.
Yeah, I mean that's true. It's definitely true. Also, when I hear the Lil Nas X song, that's definitely a hip hop song for sure. But it does have a guitar in it. So So it depends on how you.
Well,